welcome back to In His Mind. For this next segment, this is very surprising because roughly 2 hours ago I had an epiphany that just blew my mind. And while it is not a solution, it has helped me understand where I'm at better, as well as one of the most common problems that many people struggle with today, and that is depression. So I am calling this recording The Graveyard Matters, and I'll explain why. And honestly, it's both cool and humorous at the same time, surprisingly, mostly because after playing a round of Magic the Gathering on Arena with the deck The Graveyard Matters, it hit me. And yes, I kid you not, this understanding of depression really clicked in a way that I never expected or even thought would happen. So this is worth your time, and hopefully you will learn more about this as well as get a couple of laughs in, just because this is very humorous to stumble upon one of these lifelong problems that we all go through, because depression hits us all in one way or another. But for me, it's something that has lasted for over a decade. Anyway, hopefully this will help some of you out there. In short, let me start from one of the places that most everyone seems to understand very well. Depression hits us in multiple ways. It could start off by simply being you're hungry and there's a deficit in there somewhere, like a out of balance, like you're not getting sleep, you're not taking care of yourself properly. That can be adjusted. That type of depression doesn't seem to have it doesn't seem to have the same, it doesn't hit the same way because it comes about differently. But depression, as far as with, nihilism, like there's no point. Does this even matter? It's something that is more common that we all, like I said, that we all go through. Those are the two most commonly known types of depression out there. There are other ones, I believe, but they're not ones I want to go into. But in short, the traditional point of view with, value about, hey, let's, work towards something in our life, a home, a family, kids, a wife, a spouse, a career, building up a legacy, something, this is traditional, this is good, this is healthy. But the problem there lies in when you, in this case, myself, where I am not at these points that I'm hitting where I can actually see and measure out, like this is where I should be at, but I'm not where I was at, where I thought I would be at when I was younger. I have a home, I have pets, and I have a career. That's it. No family, no spouse, no kids. So I have to say that threw me for a loop for like nearly a decade, if not longer than a decade. It is 2023, and I got out of active duty in 2015. So at least 8 years, because I got into the reserves in 2011. So somewhere between 8 years and 11 years is when depression hit me and just started growing. And I could not see, when I got out of the Army, I could not see my future. I could not understand. And it was like hitting a wall. I just could not get around that wall. And over time, my depression grew to the point where I just shut down. And I stopped taking care of myself. I was trying to make it on a day-to-day basis, trying to find ways to recover. Eventually I did, and I did get some counseling, so I was able to, and I have some friends to help me out too. So I was able to recover and get back to my feet, so to speak. Now, during that time period, I dated the wrong person who used me for my money and unfortunately for sex. So I have to say that was also additional struggle that ended up causing trauma and other problems that added to this whole thing with depression. So anyway, moving on. The point I'm trying to make here is when your life does not line up in the way that you think it does from a traditional point of view, you're going to struggle with this whole thing about, is what I'm doing even worth it? Is my life worth it? Is there anything that I'm building up in my life? Like, I can't even see my future. I can't even see what's ahead of me. Yes, in a traditional point of view, you're not going to see what's ahead of you. And that is going to throw many people for a loop, because it's like, this is something new. This is like, where's the answer? What are you supposed to be focusing on? And that is where the point that I want to make with the graveyard matters. And let me explain, because this is like, it blew my mind. So in short, the core value that I want to put down here is basically your efforts, your actions are building value, even if there is a lot more failure and loss right now. This is one of those things where the longer you do something, the more you do something, it's not just simply the better you get at it. If it's like a job, a hobby, a sport, lifting weights, that even applies to that. You start out with 10 pounds and you work your way up to 40 pounds. All right? So, yes, there is going to be some pain, there's going to be some loss. But the point I'm trying to say is the longer you go, the better you should get, the more you should accrue, the more experience, the more knowledge, the more expertise. There's a lot more that you'll be having built up between now and where you were at in the past. So, as far as this tying to Magic the Gathering, there are cards where you put things into a zone called the graveyard. There's a stack of cards that you play off of called the library. And I'm explaining this for those who don't know. So basically you have cards in your hand, cards in the library, which is this big pile. And as you're playing stuff, you're taking cards from your library and putting into the graveyard, which is the dead zone, where things go to die and all that. Creatures die, all that stuff. That doesn't necessarily matter, but what matters is there are other cards that pull value from the graveyard. And so what seems like a loss now, and I'm making this relatable to you, so what seems as to be a loss now is something that will come back and be valuable later down the road. It's just not valuable right then and there. Not everything will have an immediate impact in your life right here and now. And that is incredibly important, because we are living in a society that wants to see results here and now. Patience. What is that? Why does that even matter? It matters because maturity, growth, building up value in our lives, and building up our names, who we are, our legacy that we're leaving behind, all of that. I mean, here's the thing. Does your wife, does your kids, do they grow up in the span of days? No, that takes years. It takes over a decade for that to actually happen. Building a value takes time, plain and simple. And the thing is, having to shift my understanding from the fact that, hey, this isn't working out, and then figuring out what to shift my mind to, because my depression is somehow tied to the way I'm seeing and understanding things is from a traditional point of view. And it's not that it's bad or even wrong, it's the fact that it's off. Things have shifted quite a bit. And there's a lot of explanation as to how and why it shifted. That is important, but that's for another discussion. And many others have already covered that anyway, as far as like how the times have changed and all that. The point I'm trying to say is depression. This is big, and the fact is, stumbling upon the fact that taking actions and building up the future actually makes it worth it in the end. And in a way, it directly fights against nihilism about the whole, what is the point of it all? The point is you're building value up in your life. Not necessarily for today, maybe for tomorrow, maybe for the next week or the next year. In the next decade, definitely, for sure. And for those who are thinking long terms, because they have kids, and if you have kids and you care about them, you're going to want to plan up their future as far as what you're leaving behind for them. So the value that you're building up now, you can clearly see because it's going to be for them later down the road. So it won't necessarily help remove your depression from you, but this should help you get a better understanding that just because what you're expecting to happen to you is not happening to you does not mean that all is lost, that you have no future, and that there is essentially that you're wasting your time, because you are building your life up, you're building your future, and that takes time. This is a relief, and I'm definitely more at peace now that I'm not seeing that gray wall ahead of me that I have for so many years where I could not see around it. Yes, it's a blank slate, but it's more of a canvas now than it is a wall where I can paint whatever I want on it, so to speak. I've already been building up quite a bit of value in my life. I'm just starting to see more and more pieces put together. The young men who I talk to, I sent out a voice message to this group that I'm in, and many have three have responded back positively. One of them stating that they themselves were wondering, was there actually a future, and what would happen if they were to die? It's both sad as well as a relief to hear that, because I'm not the only one who's questioning in this sort of way. And there's a lot more to go on, but like I said, I wanted to, talk about the whole depression side here. Now, finishing this up with Magic the Gathering, I want to just say that the graveyard can be utilized in a number of ways in Magic the Gathering. Just because things go there doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that is a loss. People consider that another resource. People in the game of Magic, people also consider their life to be a resource, because there are cards that say pay 2 life and draw 2 cards, and you start out with a set amount of life, which it would be 20 or 40 depending on the format, the way you play the game. And so the idea that card advantage actually matters, where you have like 8 cards, 7 cards in your hand. And that matters because if you don't have anything in your hand, you can't play anything. You can't win. You can't advance the board state. You can't, build up your future, so to speak, making that relatable to your life outside of this game here. But the graveyard changes it all, because the way you use it, you can still win even if your hands are empty. The pieces you put into your life matter. They just may not matter today. Anyway, I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope you are thinking differently now about your own depression. And yes, this may be hard, this may be tough, but the lessons here do matter. Just stop and think about how this applies to your own life and see what you get from it.